Hey friend, welcome to the FLEXimum Life podcast, where we chat flexible learning, parenting, wellness, and all the muddy, magical bits in between. I'm SJ, former teacher, personal trainer, farmer's wife, and flexi schooling mum, living the wild and wonderful countryside life. To keep up with all the chaos, I start my day with my favourite wellness pick-me-up, a raspberry energy fizz stick. It's packed with B vitamins, natural caffeine, and a fizzy little lift that keeps me going. Fancy trying them? You'll find a special listener discount in the show notes. Now grab your cuppa or energy fizz and let's dive into today's episode. Hey friend, how are you? Welcome to today's episode. Before we get started, if you are hearing a lot of sheep in the background, it's me. We live on a farm, okay, and I believe the shepherd is shearing lots of sheep today, so there might be a bit of random barring in the background, so bear with me if you hear that. And other exciting news to listen out for. Over the coming weeks, I have got an exciting partnership with a wonderful brand that I'm super passionate about. It's owned by a wonderful lady called Candice. I'm not going to give it away quite yet because I want to keep it for the next week. But it's a wonderful company. I know that you are going to love the products that they have. It's a small business. It's based here in the UK, but they also ship their product internationally. And for those of you that have struggled with menopause and hormone symptoms, you are going to love this. So listen out for that. Make sure you subscribe and you come back because I know that you are going to be excited about this new partnership. Now, today we're talking about home education and menopause. So looking after you while teaching them. Now, we've spoken a lot on this podcast in the past about menopause and hormones and health. And this episode really is about bringing these two things that I'm sort of passionate about, health and wellness, and then also education, home education, and having autonomy over our children's learning. But it's really challenging. And ultimately, it can feel like you've got this sort of double load going on, and that can feel incredibly hard. So let's start by talking about home education. Those of you that home educate full-time, like you guys are absolute legends. It is a full-time job. I flexi school my daughter, so she has 3 days in school and 2 days at home with me. We have been in the past, we did full-time home ed for about 3 or 4 months. So I know it is a full-time job. It's emotional. It's intellectual. You got to use your brain. And there's a huge amount of logistics that go in behind the scenes as well. Now, if you take all of that and layer on top this wonderful thing called menopause that we often are experiencing, hot flushes, brain fog, mood swings, insomnia, you have got this recipe for a case of serious potential overwhelm. And you might be thinking, I've got to get through these lessons. I've got to maybe teach a lesson on you've got some activities planned and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden you get struck down by a lovely hot sweat. It can be really, really stressful. It can be frustrating. It can be exhausting. And it can also feel extremely isolating. And I really want you to know that as you're listening to this podcast, that you're not on your own. You have a friend in me, and you don't have to push through this process without support. And that's what I want to talk today is I want to talk about a few things that you can do to look after yourself. Because as I often have said in the past on this podcast, is you're the one that's running this ship. You're the one who is probably planning all the lessons, doing all the things, running the home. And you have got permission here to prioritize yourself. And it really is important, and it is a real reminder for you to remember that you matter as well. And you have to prioritize your health to be able to home educate your children successfully. Because you are the one who ultimately has taken ownership and taken responsibility for this. And if you are burnt out and worn out and stressed out and your menopause symptoms are all over the place and your hormones are everywhere, you're not going to be able to show up for your children in the best way possible. So another gentle reminder that you matter too, and it's absolutely okay to adjust your expectations. You do not have to be a superhuman. And I'm here to say self-care today really isn't a luxury, it's actually maintenance. And I really strongly believe that this is something that you need to be building into the rhythm of your home care, your home education journey. Self-care for you, and then also, this is a good way of showing your children actually how to look after themselves as well, and it's important. So let's talk about self-care, and I'm going to go back to this term where saying it isn't a luxury, it's maintenance. So what does that look like? Because we see these kind of, self-care things as being like bubble baths and face masks and trip to the spa, but that's probably not reality for most of us. So let's talk about what it could actually look like for you. And I'm going to give you some ideas of some really simple but some powerful things that you could build into your week to give yourself a little bit of self-care. So number one, I think taking some kind of scheduled breaks is really, really important. Now, this is, something that is really fantastic about being a home educating family is that you have this fluidity to work around. There's no set routine. There's no you don't have to be rigid in what you're doing. So if you feel like you need to take a break, or if your kids feel like they need to take a break, then take a break. Like sit quietly, do some meditation, go outside, stand barefoot in the grass, just stop. And this is the brilliant thing about being a home educating family is you have the freedom to be able to do this. You have the freedom to, respond to what your children need, but also what you need as well. Okay, number two is really thinking about restorative sleep. Now, when menopause does mess with your sleep, it's really difficult. It's really challenging. You often might find that you have quite disturbed sleep. Perhaps you're getting hot flushes and these are waking you up in the night. And that's really, really frustrating. So try, there's an awful lot of things out there like supplements and that sort of thing that you could potentially try. I think it's important to try and avoid caffeine after 2:00 in the afternoon, because remember, caffeine can actually stay in your system for 12 hours. And really, really think about creating a calm evening routine. And even if that looks like something like I do, which is I often will have a warm shower and then I'll read a book before I go to sleep. And if you'd like, I can do a whole episode around like routines that I have. So I could do an episode around like morning routines, what they look like when we are on school days and when we're not on school days. And then perhaps I can share some information around my evening routines as well. Okay, number three is hydration and nutrition. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we talk about hydration, we talk about nutrition a huge amount, and we've really dug into in the past the impacts of nutrition on the way our body is changing and shifting. And these hormone shifts that we're going through really can leave you feeling incredibly drained. So it's important to keep hydrated. And when I talk about hydration as well, particularly if you're somebody who exercises, that doesn't just mean water. It means replacing your minerals as well. It means adding in some, like some electrolytes, some salts, some, things that your body is going to be needing that will help you, particularly if you have been exercising as well, because just drinking gallons and gallons of water actually doesn't really sort of do an awful lot for you other than make you go to the toilet. But we really need to be quite mindful about replacing some of the minerals that we're losing, particularly when we're exercising. And of course, aiming for protein and fiber-rich foods to help keep your energy levels stable. And I've done a whole podcast episode about protein and incorporating more protein into your diet before. If you scroll down into some of the menopause ones, you'll easily find that. But what might be helpful for the future is for me to actually do an episode where I'm sharing how we incorporate a lot of protein into our diets and give you some ideas and that sort of things. Number 5, I think connection is really important. And you've already taken that first step by listening to this podcast. Sharing not only our home education journey, but also sharing our menopause journey is really, really important. If you've got some mums who are, like-minded, perhaps you might start a WhatsApp group or have some kind of weekly check-in. Things can feel so much better when you're reminded that you're not the only one that is feeling like this and juggling these kind of things. Now, one of the downsides I have found from being part of the home education community is that some home educators, and I'm not labeling everybody with this, can be a little bit flaky because we're very much working around the rhythm of our children and we don't necessarily have such a strict structured routine. It can be difficult to kind of get other people to commit to certain activities and things with you. And this is one of the things I actually really like about flexi schooling, is because my daughter has different groups of friends. So it means we do have lots and lots of options for connecting with people and different communities. So let's talk about things that we can do in terms of home education and how we can make it work alongside our hormones as well. And I have touched on some of these things previously. So let me talk you through some of the things that have helped me, and then also some of the other people that I talk to within my community as well. So the beauty, and I've already alluded to this in the podcast, is being a home educating family, you have a flexible routine. If you have had a rough night, adjust the next day. You don't have to get up and do the school run. You can shorten, perhaps if you do a more sort of structured learning approach, you could shorten those times. You could swap that out completely and, maybe watch a documentary on the TV. Maybe you could get your children to have more sort of independent time. You're still obviously educating, but it just looks a bit different. And it's really important that these flexible routines are not just about how your children are feeling, but also how you're feeling too. Number 2, self-led learning. And I think, again, this is the wonderful thing about home education, is really allowing our children to, take the lead. I know in sort of the unschooling approach, it very much is child-led. And we have quite this wonderful ability to have sort of child-led learning. And I think it's really great to encourage your children to take more of an initiative, because it teaches them responsibility and also gives you breathing space. I'm very lucky in my daughter. She is very good at sort of being, when we're at home, and I think this comes down to the fact that she lives on a farm in a farming community. She has always had to get on with things, and she hasn't been in the situation where she has my full attention all the time, and she hasn't always had an adult to, obviously I've been making sure that she's okay and that she's safe, but she hasn't always had my undivided attention for 100% of the time. So she's actually in a very good situation where she can be very independent and she can take a lot of initiative. And it's such a wonderful thing to actually see and take a step back and let them see how creative they can be when they're not being led by us as adults. And you could just come up with one idea Or you could give them, I mean, this is one of the favorite things my daughter loves to do. She loves to go through our like recycling. We have a bin at home that has all like the recycling things in it. And she just loves to kind of go and get that, and she'll get it out and she'll just make these things. And she'll be there for, like a good 45 minutes to an hour, just really like creating something that she has come up with that is her own, like her own thought process. She's taken her own initiative. And I think having this flexibility and encouraging like self-led learning, particularly on the days where you perhaps are struggling because your hormones are giving you a good time, you'll actually see some really wonderful moments and things that come from your children that will just really, really fill your heart with absolute joy. Okay, number 3, let's talk about co-learning opportunities, because this is an opportunity for you and your children to enjoy subjects that you both enjoy. Maybe you are an artist, maybe you're a history geek, maybe you can play an instrument. Like, these can be really calming and very connective, and they don't always require you to have a huge amount of input, and they don't require you to sort of, have a lot of sort of planning going on either. And one of my favorite things that I really like to do with Chloe is we just get out like all the colored pencils and we'll sit down together and we'll just like color in together, like those, those like calming books that you can get, those coloring calming books. We'll just sit there together and it just looks really, really lovely. Now we're in a situation where we can use an awful lot of audio and visual resources. Obviously you're a fan of audio because you're listening to me, but we can, like tap into podcasts and audiobook. All of these kind of things can give you a break while you're still engaging with your child. My daughter, she still uses it. She has this thing called a Tony box. I'm sure some of you might have heard of it. And it's a really, really lovely unit because it doesn't have a screen, and you purchase these characters that sit on top of the Tony box, and it allows them to like sit and listen to stories or songs. And, like granted, some of these can be quite expensive, but actually if you go onto like places like Vinted and secondhand places, you can often buy them like cheaper where people are selling them on. You could also, there's one that Chloe has that is like a podcast Tony, and every day it gets updated with content, and it's all like, like the animal of the day, like all of those kind of things. And there's lots of other resources and lots of other things that you can, sort of tap into that don't involve a screen, because I'm not the biggest fan of like using iPads and that kind of thing. And I think I will also do another episode all about that. And I'm not a big fan of YouTube either. I think that one needs to be like quite carefully monitored. But there's an awful lot of resources that you can use out there, like podcast, audiobooks. You can go into the library and you can get, here in the UK, you can go and rent out like children's audiobooks, and they come on a CD. And I love this like tactile, old-fashioned kind of way of selecting a CD, putting it into a cheap CD player, and just allowing children to sort of go through that process. I think there's something very much to be celebrated about that. And the same, like potentially when it comes to like visual resources, I really love like an old-fashioned DVD player where you've got a TV and a DVD player and you've got a selection of DVDs, and the children are choosing what they want to watch, but it's not this like instant streaming YouTube video kind of thing. So they still get to watch something, but there's an awful lot more of sort of a process going in behind the scenes of choosing something and making that selection. And again, like if you're thinking about sort of, things that would be quite easy to do on the days that you're facing things and maybe things are a bit challenging, perhaps you could take a wander around like secondhand shops or something and ask them, give them like a budget, give them a couple of pounds or something and say, hey, look, you can go and buy a book, you could buy a CD, you could buy a DVD, and you can, they can sort of find something that they want to watch, something that they want to enjoy. But again, it's the process of working with money, making decisions, and that's still a really, really exciting way of learning. Okay, my last thing to say on these days as well, when you're finding things like stressful, when you don't have like high levels of energy because your hormones are kicking your butt, I think it's really important to ask for help. And whether that is help from your husband, your friends, whether it's using an online tutor, you're absolutely allowed to delegate. On the days when I'm struggling, when my hormones are really making my life really difficult, I often get some really bad headaches sometimes. Chloe's dad, Tim, will pop her in the truck with him and take her out for a couple of hours, and she might sit in the tractor with him, or she might go and check some animals in the truck with him, or we're quite lucky he's in a situation where, because of the lifestyle that we have, that she can kind of get involved with him sometimes and go and see what's going on around the farm, and she absolutely loves that, and that's so much fun. There's another really great resource that we have here that's called the £2 Tuition Hub, and they have like online tutors that are absolutely fantastic, and you pay £10 for a series of lessons, and you can join into those live, or you can use those and watch them back. And I do think those ones are not only like incredibly affordable, but really, really high quality as well. And the tutors on those sessions really, really do go out of their way of making sure that the children are really engaged and having a really good learning experience. So there's a couple of ideas for you with that. Okay, before we wrap up today, I do want to touch on and have a word about emotional waves, because menopause really does bring a lot of emotional shifts, and it can be like a roller coaster, a hormone roller coaster. And some of those really can clash with the emotional intensity of parenting. And for those of you that do have children who perhaps have additional needs as well, there's an extra added layer into that. And I think it's important to say that if you're finding that you're snapping more than usual, maybe you're crying more than usual, or you just feel really like flat and detached, please know that you're not failing. You're really, really not. You're human, you're hormonal, and you're absolutely doing your best, my friend. So I would recommend, if you do find yourself feeling like this, is actually start tracking like your emotional patterns. Maybe you could use a journal or some kind of app. In the days before like menopause sort of kicked me, I used to talk about cycle syncing. And you really can, if you sort of try and get a bit more in tune with your body. Although with menopause, it's a little bit more challenging because we don't always know what's going to come our way. Actually, you can often still see a bit of a pattern. So if you're tracking your up and down emotional patterns, you might find it's a pattern within your cycle. Perhaps you might find it's a pattern with activities and things that you're doing, or places that you're going, people that you're engaging with, and it can help you anticipate the days that are going to be perhaps more tougher, and then you can plan accordingly as well. And remember, if things are feeling hard, things are feeling too heavy, please go and talk to your doctor, go and speak to your GP here in the UK. And there is a lot of support out there, whether that is through HRT that we've spoken about, whether it's counselling, whether it is having support from people around you. There is so many places that you can get support. So let's talk about finishing up. I wanted to tell you that you are doing an amazing job. Home education really is a full-time gig. It's a full-time job on top of probably running at home, which is full-time. And if you are home educating through menopause, oh, my friend, you are doing something incredibly brave. And incredibly beautiful as well. And please don't forget that your well-being really is just as important as the learning that you're creating for your child as well. So give yourself grace, build in rest, and laugh when you forget what day it is, because I happen to do that like all the time. And remember, this is a season. It will pass. It's probably just one day. And you will look back on it and you will laugh and you will think, oh my gosh, like I'm driving myself potty because I've lost my keys so many times from brain fog. It's not going to be forever. And it's the same with our children. You know, they grow up really fast. They move through seasons and changes and shifts and patterns. And so do you. And so will your hormones. And just take time. Enjoy each day as much as you can. Give yourself that grace. Give yourself the rest that you need. And really, let's try and have a little bit of a laugh about these things, because it's not the end of the world. The wonderful, beautiful thing about home education is that we can respond and be flexible to these natural rhythms in our life, and you're not having to force yourself to do these things. You are in control of your day. What a wonderful thing that is to celebrate. I really hope that this episode resonated with you. Please share it with a friend who might need to hear it. I know home educating mums give themselves a really, really hard time because they feel such a sense of responsibility for their children, because it's not an easy thing to take full responsibility for your children's education. And if you really do have any of your own tips and stories that you might like to share, perhaps you'd like to come on the podcast and share some of your thoughts and ideas, I'd really love for you to reach out. Please do. I'd love to hear from you. My email is in the show notes. You really are a wonderful, special human being who is absolutely doing your best for your family and for your children. And I really hope to talk to you next time. But in the meantime, look after yourself. Thanks so much for listening to Flexi Mum Life. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, and come say hi over on Instagram at the Flexi Mum Life. If you need a boost, grab my favourite Raspberry Energy Fizz sticks. The link with a cheeky discount is waiting for you in the show notes. See you next time for more learning, mum life, and a bit of fizz.